Yes, join me now, Ted O'Brien. Ted O'Brien, thanks so much for your time. We've had this suggestion from Peter Dutton, you just heard Kieran there talk about it, that he could support the tax changes on the PRRT as long as there are quid pro quo changes to allow fast tracking of gas projects. How would this work? What are you after here?
Good morning to you, Andrew, and I did just hear that interview. We've said from the get-go in opposition that we're prepared to be constructive where we can and critical where we must. And I think what Peter Dutton has said with the PRRT is that we're happy to be constructive. We get it that the industry is nervous that Labor will yet again do a deal with the Greens that will make life harder for everyday Australians and harder for the Australian economy. We get that. And so, yes, we are happy to engage constructively with the government, but we're also saying that doesn't mean we're going to give a blank cheque. We have to acknowledge as a country the problems Labor is creating. Now, the problems they're creating include a restriction in the supply of gas. They've done everything to demonise gas. The PRRT is another tax to punish that industry. So we are saying we're happy to engage, we'll do so constructively, but we have to look at the entire context here, which is a series of policies from the Labor Party that's trying to kill off an industry. And so if we are to say yes, that won't be a blank cheque, we'll have to negotiate.
So which projects do you want approved quicker and how would that occur?
Well, right across the gamut of projects, candidly, Andrew, because if you look, it doesn't matter if it's AEMO, it doesn't matter if it's the ACCC, if you look at the Grattan Institute, let alone the industry, they are all saying that we are looking at shortfalls in gas. And if we have shortfalls in that fuel source, then prices continue to go up, reliability is questioned, sovereign risk becomes an issue, investment lowers. So if that's the problem you're trying to solve, then you ask yourself the question, what has this government sought to do? Well, it took gas out of the capacity mechanism. It ripped $100 million out of gas pipelines and exploration from its October budget, $250 million out of that budget for CCS. It banned gas from the National Reconstruction Fund. It had unprecedented intervention to cap gas. Then it tightened the ADGSM. It introduced a mandatory code. It introduced a carbon tax. Now it's introducing a PRRT. And we are wondering why we have some of our most important trading partners, including Japan, calling out sovereign risk. And here in Australia, we found out last week that prices are only going to go up further for the Australian consumer.
I'll get to that.
Electricity prices, 25%.
I will get to that.
It's all related, isn't it, Andrew?
Ted O'Brien, if I can get in there. Have you consulted industry on this plan? On what you're negotiating with the government?
Industry on a permanent basis.
Okay.
Power
bills went up
on a permanent basis.
Power bills went up late last week, as you mentioned, but they could have been far worse. Do you concede now that the price caps the opposition opposed have actually had a fairly decent effect? The regulator says they reduced the average increase by about $300.
Andrew, look, I think that the price caps were part of a government intervention that has made the situation worse, not better. You know, when the government claims that it could have been worse, honestly, they are comparing their dumb policies now to dumb policies 6 months ago.
But without that intervention, bills would be higher. But without that intervention, bills would be higher, wouldn't they?
Andrew, if you have a look at when the intervention took place, which was just before Christmas, prices were coming down before the intervention. So there's no evidence here that the intervention itself was the thing that got prices down. There's a thing called the marketplace that Labor can't stand. We believe in the marketplace. Labor believes in big government. The marketplace started to see prices come down. Labor introduced intervention and then claims of victory. There's no victory when power prices are going to go up yet again.
Just to make this clear, you're saying it's your belief that the price caps have made no difference, that the bills would have come down this much anyway. Is that your position?
My position is this. Last term of government, the coalition got prices down. Households, 8%, businesses, 10%, industry, 12%. Since Labor has come to government, due to its suite of policies, which I laid out before, especially with respect to gas, it is forcing a restriction in supply. Price is a function, supply and demand. If you restrict supply, prices go up.
Yeah, but just on that point, Mr. O'Brien,
interventions.
Mr. O'Brien, just on that point, are you saying that without, because I think I just heard you pretty much say this, if that price cap had not occurred, the prices would have come down the same amount? Is that what you're saying?
I don't think anybody can say that, Andrew, because nobody knows what the prices would otherwise be. I don't want to put forward a counterfactual argument here. My point is simply this. Labor's running a big government agenda. It's not working, and Australians are paying the price.
All right. The opposition has spoken about Middle Australia missing out in the budget. Should the rebates on electricity bills, should they have extended beyond those on family tax benefit Part A and B?
We certainly welcome any relief for any Australian, but there has been nothing in the budget for Middle Australia. Certainly right about that. I think the way to ensure that Middle Australia is looked after with respect to energy prices, as well as all Australians, again, is getting supply into the market. That should be the government's priority. Because at the end of the day, this relief package, Andrew, it's a one-off Band-Aid measure. All it does is, even for those who will receive it, it postpones the pain. They're going to get even more pain at a later date because there's nothing in the budget that addressed the source of the problem of rising power bills. We need more supply. And that's why Peter Dutton said, well, PRRT, I know Labor, you want the loving embrace of the Greens, but if you want to talk to us, sure. But it's not a blank cheque. We've got to make sure we're dealing with the source of the problem that's hurting the Australian people in energy. And that means more supply so prices don't keep skyrocketing.
All right, let's talk about this apparent confrontation between Philip Lowe and Labor MPs on the Economics Committee around the dangers of wages going up, increasing inflation. You heard Pat Cormann before. He said that the Liberal MPs leaked this and it was disrespectful for them to leak it. What do you say to that?
Well, I did hear Patrick Gorman say that, but he also had absolutely no evidence it was a claim, right? Again, the issue is this. Everything's going up. Inflation's going up. Mortgages as a result are going up. We know from the budget the Australian people are going to get higher prices, higher taxes, higher mortgages. If there were a meeting with the RBA during the week and Philip Lowe made statements, if those statements were made, of course, they typically stay within the confines of that committee room. I think the issue that matters for Australians is whether or not we are going to see interest rates go up and mortgages continue to skyrocket. You sit around the kitchen table, and I was doing so.
Do you have fears around wages going up, causing interest rates to go up?
Oh, look, I think we all would like to see Australians get paid more, but it's about striking the right balance, Andrew. And the only one article I read about that meeting with Lowe was him making the point that the RBA has a job to do. It has to ensure that inflation is within a certain band. And if he is being pushed by Labor MPs to actually move beyond the scope of what the RBA is meant to do, well, that's for the Labor MPs to explain why. At least the one article I read sounds as though he took a very responsible position, saying, you know what, we have to ensure that we have inflation within a band. We've got a job to do. We're going to do the job. And if he is calling Labor out for its suite of policies that are driving inflation in a different direction, he's doing his job.
Can I ask, as a Queenslander, how are you feeling about the party's prospects in Fadden?
Oh, look, if we've got any issue in Fadden right now, it's the depth of talent we have for a pre-selection, Andrew. We know that I think that the people of Fadden, the people of the Gold Coast, moreover, understand that they were big winners out of the former coalition government and now they're big losers out of Labor. And I think that'll be the basis of their vote.
Could these scandals around the departing member Stuart Robert around Robodebt and him assisting lobbyists while an MP hurt your prospects in Fadden?
Oh, look, I put nothing past the Labor Party. The Labor Party will run negative, Andrew. I give them credit for that. You don't get a more ruthless negative campaigner than the Labor Party. And so who knows, they'll run everything they can. If they can cause problems based on a negative campaign, that's what they'll do. We'll keep doing what we do. At the end of the day, Fadden has been well represented for many years through the coalition and through Stewie Robert, and we're proud of that. And the person who will be pre-selected, I have absolute confidence, will also represent that area if the people of Fadden put the trust in him or her.
All right, Peter Dutton's been pretty express in terms of his opposition to the Voice referendum now. Do you think this referendum will fail now?
Well, I think the more the Australian people ask the question, what's it all about, the more likely it is going to fail because they won't get an answer, Andrew. And, you know, I'm as frustrated with this as anybody, really. The Prime Minister is asking the Australian people to make a permanent change in our Constitution, enshrining in the Constitution a new power around the voice, but says he's not going to design what it actually means until after people cast their vote. I think that's enormously unfair. It sets the debate up to be a very emotional debate and therefore a very divisive debate. I think it's a deliberate ploy on the part of the Prime Minister to ensure that this entire campaign of the months ahead is a highly charged one. That's not good for Australia.
If the referendum
it's not too late for the Prime Minister to release information.
If the referendum were to fail, what would that mean for Aboriginal people in this country?
Look, I think the most important thing for our Indigenous people is, as a nation, that we use our indigeneity as a country to unite Australians, which is why we say big yes, tick, to having Indigenous recognition in the Constitution. That's what we should be going after. Secondly, we still need to close the gap and we need to ensure that local voices count. Our approach is one of bottom-up, grassroots. That will never change. We believe that especially remote communities where there are real issues, it's the leaders in those communities, it's their voices that need to be listened to. We need to continue on that journey.
Ted O'Brien, sorry, we're out of time. Thanks so much for your time this morning.